Yes, my next project is going to be to bring a perfect version of Sonic the Hedgehog to the Amiga. The plan is to target both the stock A1200 and also release a version for the A500 with probably 1 meg of memory. Now, in this video, we are going to look at the differences between the Mega Drive and the Amiga and some of the challenges that we'll face in doing this piece of work. And we're going to talk about how even getting the Sega logo up and running on the Amiga was maybe more challenging than you might think. Right, here we go. Let's boot this thing. I've got the audio just coming through headphones actually at the moment. So anyway, I think that's going to do its thing and load off that virtual floppy. I'll put the headphones nice and near the nice and near the phone so you can hear the audio. I haven't plugged my speakers in just for this little demo. Sega! So first, let's compare the Sega Megadrive specs with the Amiga. On paper, they seem relatively close. The Megadrive has the same processor as the A500, clocked at a similar speed. The Megadrive only has 64K of memory, but this is somewhat deceptive because every cartridge you plug into it is essentially a giant ROM that can be accessed almost instantly. Sonic is half a megabyte in size, which includes the code graphics and audio data. So in this case, we can think of the Megadrive as having over half a megabyte of memory, because unlike with a home computer, you don't need to load the code into memory. The processor points directly at the ROM data. Where the two systems depart quite radically is how they handle graphics. The Amiga has a very flexible system, including the blitter chip, that can manipulate data in many ways, some of which facilitate custom graphics operations. On the other hand, the Megadrive has a far more rigid graphics system that handles 2 tile layers and a sprite layer. However, that rigidity makes it exceptionally fast at what it does. The key challenge of this project will be to figure out how to best handle the graphics processing on the dissimilar Amiga hardware.
The Sega Genesis has blast processing. Super Nintendo doesn't. So what's blast processing do?
Now, unlike with the Outrun project, where I spent around a year decompiling and understanding the code, Sonic has already been decompiled for me, and I want to give a shout out to the team who did this, as they've done a fantastic job. So now that I have the code, I can just hit compile and run it on the Amiga, right? Well, not quite. Unlike with a modern compiler, code base and software libraries, there's no hardware abstraction with old code bases like this. Everything writes directly to the Megadrive memory, and those memory addresses will often result in completely different behavior on the Amiga. Writing to one of those addresses could well crash the code or just deliver unexpected behavior that causes the code not to run at all. We've still got to go through this code base on a line-by-line basis. Furthermore, the challenge of working with an old code base like this is it tends to be incredibly convoluted. There are tens of thousands of lines of assembly code, and it can be tricky to figure out even how to get started. So I set myself a seemingly simple goal. The goal was to get the Sega logo animation up and running. Sega! Now, to be clear, if I just wanted to recreate this effect on the Amiga, it would be easy to do so, but I'm not looking to create a disposable prototype here. If we're aiming to get complete Sonic the Hedgehog levels up and running, we need to start building this code base out for real. That means not taking any shortcuts and actually using the original code and data as a basis. In fact, just to get this logo up and running, we're going to have to ensure we can render Megadrive style tile data, blend 2 independent tile maps with transparency, plus we'll need to handle the multiple compression algorithms used by Sonic the Hedgehog. When I start any project, I want my tooling and development environment to be as fast and robust as possible. As such, One of the first things I did was to start creating a suite of command line tools that would help me understand and manipulate Sonic's data. The heart of any graphics display is the pixel. It's like the smallest atomic unit from which everything else is constructed. So one of the first tasks was to create a translator to convert Megadrive palettes to Amiga palettes. When it comes to color pixels, the Megadrive's format is effectively an inverted version of the Amiga's. The Megadrive has less color fidelity per pixel. However, it can display a wider array of colors simultaneously under normal circumstances than the A500. This means that for the A500 version, we will have to rework the palettes to fit into a 32 color display, whereas for the A1200 version, we can leave them as is, at 64 colors. The plan here is to use the stock A1200 for the lead version, because it will be faster to get things running, and then make the palette changes necessary for the A500 version. As you can see, I can now run a simple script that has converted every palette in the entire game to the Amiga. On the Amiga software side, the best way to get started is by writing functions that can be swapped in every time the Sonic code attempts to access the Megadrive graphics hardware. This isn't emulation as such, it's more of a high-level replacement, and I must stress this isn't an approach designed for speed at this stage. What we want to do is ensure the conversion is easy to debug. We don't want to get into radical changes before we get something working. Let's take a look at what is going on under the hood to display the Sega logo using a Megadrive emulator called Exodus. We can see that a set of 8x8 tiles are loaded into the Megadrive's video memory. These are arranged into the Sega logo by two tile maps or planes. If we look at the background plane, it kind of displays a giant blue block. Then the foreground plane displays the outline of the Sega logo. So what's going on here? Well, to achieve the final image, the two planes are blended together. This means that the animation and fading effect we can see is achieved entirely with static graphics. At no point is the frame updated with new graphics data. What does change is how the palette is used. Throughout this sequence, the palette is constantly updated. Invisible to the eye is the fact that many of these tiles that look blank actually contain very different values. However, these different values are mostly set to white, so they look identical. But Sonic's logo code runs a palette cycling routine to change where colours are stored in palette RAM every frame. This means that the tile colours are constantly changing. This not only creates the animation of the blue vertical bars running across the screen, but when the two layers are combined, partially masking out the background layer, the logo itself appears to shine.
What if you don't have blast processing?
The Megadrive stores its graphics data in a chunky format. The Amiga uses a planar format, so again I created tooling to convert the tile data. The graphics data uses an index to look up the final colour, ranging from 0 to 15. But earlier we said that the Megadrive can display 64 colours at the same time. So how does that work if the pixel data caps out at colour 15? Well, the Megadrive tile map hardware allows the programmer to choose from one of 4 palettes, effectively multiplying the number of colours by 4, giving us 64 colours. We need to recreate this colour mapping on the Amiga to remap the pixel data to 64 colours at runtime. And as part of this tooling, a mask is created. This mask denotes each pixel that is set in the graphics data. The mask itself is then written to one or more of the Amiga's bit planes, which has the effect of shifting the colours into the higher palette values. This is pretty straightforward Amiga programming, but we've already encountered a significant deviation from the original Sonic. Whereas an 8x8 tile can be stored in 32 bytes on the Megadrive, we're going to need an extra 8 bytes for the mask data. Therefore, we're already increasing the file size of the game considerably. The other complication is that all of this graphics data is already compressed in the Sonic ROM and extracted at runtime. We're going to need to uncompress and recompress our new graphics data to work with the engine. Sonic uses 3 separate compression formats, chosen for decompression speed and compression ratio depending on the type of data being compressed. Remember, memory was exceptionally expensive in the early 1990s. There were huge financial savings for Sega to be made by shipping a game on a smaller cartridge. As such, as part of our Python toolchain, we need the ability to uncompress the data, convert it to an Amiga-friendly format, and finally, recompress the data. Thankfully, the Sonic community have reverse engineered these algorithms, which meant all I had to do was port the existing C++ code to Python so that it would seamlessly slot into my tooling pipeline. So you can start to see just how much data manipulation is involved with a project of this nature. I want to have a complete understanding and control over all the data in the project to make debugging as easy as possible. I personally make a lot of mistakes when programming. Some are the result of technical misunderstandings, some are just simple typos because I'm tired or whatever. But really understanding the data that you're manipulating and every byte and how it should be used really helps you to solve problems. Now, one further tool I coded to help me understand exactly what I needed to implement for the logo screen was a tile map analyzer. This analyzer takes a tile map as an input, and what it does is it kind of tells you what functionality of the Megadrive hardware it's using to display that data. So, for example, it informed me for the Sega logo that I didn't need to implement the complicated priority system that the tile maps use. However, I did need to render both of them, blend them together, and support tile flipping too. The tile map or name table instructs the video processor in the Megadrive how to lay out the graphics on the screen. It selects the tile, its associated palette, its priority, and whether that graphics data is horizontally or vertically flipped. Without horizontal and vertical flipping, the logo looks like this. Right now, I'm performing both operations at runtime in software, but from an optimization standpoint, we may later want to horizontally flip the most frequently used tiles in advance. So, if this is a project that interests you and you want to follow along with the progress, then please consider subscribing to the channel or even join the Patreon. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them in the comments section, or I can cover them in the next video. But thanks very much for watching and see you soon.